Anyway, so hello, good morning, and welcome to the Independent Talk series. This is the second uh, show in the series, and today we have Sonia Sarkar. She has joined in, and there are still few participants who are just joining in. So we'll just give maybe a couple of more minutes so that people who are waiting in the room they can join in. So. Uh, I'm Anjan Chakraborty. I'm your host, and I bring you this independent talk series. It basically chronicles the lives of independent journalists around the world. And I am a journalist myself, and I have around 2 decades experience in journalism, and I have worked for both print and digital companies in media. And I have been asked this question over the past week that why are you doing this series with independent journalists? And, to them, I have basically asked a question. I mean, how often do you get to hear stories about independent journalists? Their journey into this career path, the kind of stories they do, their success, their learnings. I mean, how often do we get to hear? We hardly get to hear them. And that's one. The second thing is once we get to hear those stories, we kind of have a learning on how to go about being an independent journalist. What are the challenges they face, and can we really make a career in independent journalism? So these are the reasons why I thought that I'll start a session with independent journalists to hear their stories, to get an insight into independent journalism. And I think this can help both working journalists as well as would-be journalists to understand, the world of independent journalism, how independent journalists work, and maybe they can probably try this out in their career path if they think yes, this can be an option, because we all know that in the shrinking job market of the media industry, independent journalism can be something that you can foray into. And there are a lot of people that I know personally who have forayed into independent journalism. Sonia being one of them, and she was my batchmate. We and Sonia go back almost, I think, 19 years when we were in Calcutta University in the journalism department. So that's the reason why I have chosen to have this talk show with independent journalists. Now, without any more delay, let me introduce our guest today, Sonia Sarkar. She's a friend, of course, and she is a journalist with over 18 years of experience. And she has worked in different media organizations. She has worked even outside India. And she is an alumna of Calcutta University Department of Journalism. And after that, she went into reporting. And being an independent journalist since 2019, she has reported for a host of international websites. Her stories have been published in Al Jazeera, in DW, in South China Morning Post, in OZ, in Vice, in Asia Nikkei, and even the Thomson Reuters Foundation. Before that, she has also written for The Telegraph, The Indian Express, and Lounge. She has reported on religion. She has reported on armed conflicts, politics, art and culture, free speech from South and Southeast Asia, besides Iraq, Greece, and Germany. So welcome, Sonia. Thank you for being a part of this series, and thank you for making time to tell your story to us. We can learn a lot from you. So I'll set the ground rules of how we are going to have this session. So I'll ask Sonia a few questions related to independent journalism. Yes, I am the host, so I get to go first at Sonia. And meanwhile, as you hear Sonia talk, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat room. Please put your questions in the chat room. And once Sonia finishes her talk, I'll take those questions and I'll accommodate all those if I can, because we only have 1 hour, and we'll let Sonia answer those questions for you. So that's how it's going to work. And I see there are participants who are still waiting. Let me make them join the session. Okay, yeah. So I think the participants are in. So Sonia, thank you. And I'll start with saying that, the first thing that I think everybody wants to know about your journey into independent journalism. How did this journey begin? And what are the kind of stories that you have done? And which are the stories that were most satisfying? The ones that you loved reporting on or you enjoyed writing. Can you please share with us?
Thank you, Anjan, for having me here and giving me an opportunity to interact with you. Also, for like the way we see our professions, and also the opportunity to interact with the host of independent journalists. And I'm so glad that people are taking it as an option, as a career option. So yes, thanks for that. And a little correction: I have never worked out of India. Like, I have reported from different countries, but never worked as a salaried professional in any other country apart from India. So
Okay.
that's just small correction, nothing else. Well, why did I become an independent journalist? I have worked as a full-timer from 2004. March, I remember I came to Delhi and I got this job in Pioneer. And thereon, I went on working for different organizations, including Times of India, then NDTV, and Telegraph. So it was around in 2017 where I realized that there's something more that I want to do, and I have always traveled for reporting. Especially when I joined Telegraph in 2009, I was with a feature section, and there was a lot of opportunity to travel to any place you want. Of course, you have to be a convincing story to tell, and that actually broadened my outlook. Earlier, I was working as different beat reporters in Delhi, but when I joined Telegraph, there was this opportunity to go and report from anywhere you want. And over a period of time, I started increasing my reporting base. Like, of course, India, I traveled to Kashmir, Manipur, Chhattisgarh. I covered the Telangana movement. I have reported from Punjab uh, and also from Assam. But then I started increasing my reporting base. Like, I was creating these beats for myself. Like, I reported from Bangladesh, I reported from Nepal, I reported on Sri Lanka, and of course the border dispute in India and Pakistan. And then I also got an opportunity to travel to Iraq in 2016. I reported from there. So all this happened over a period of time. It didn't happen overnight, of course. But then I realized that the opportunity to travel was getting a little, I would say the opportunity was getting a little tightened. Like, there was not always budget available. So, but I am now out there to travel more and more. So over 1 year, I contemplated that should I just look for independent ways of working, and how do I do it? Because my networking skills were not so good, and I never approached anybody that, oh, I work in these sectors, so what kind of stories I can do for you. So there was no such homework done then. So it took me a year to decide finally that, well, let me just take this plunge. So in 2018, December 31st was my last day in Telegraph. And 2019, January onwards, I started working as an independent journalist, or a freelancer, as we also call it. So I traveled to Singapore, I traveled to Indonesia, Vietnam, and these are the places I reported from. I wanted to explore Southeast Asia because this is something which I've never done before. And then I realized that there's so many stories to be told. So this is how I started. Then I got an opportunity to go to Germany, and I traveled to Greece for a holiday, but then I saw there was a story, something to be done. So I came back and pitched, and that story was published in Indian Express. So it is now a combination of both personal travel and professional stories. Like, it's like doing both the things together. So I think this is an opportunity for freelancers and independent journalists to do the way they want to. There is nobody to tell you that, budget nahi hai. You do it from here, yeah. So this is a wonderful opportunity, I think. And how we manage our budget is something I will definitely tell you how I have done it. And of course, I know you also have a question on can we earn enough money by freelancing or becoming an independent journalist? So we'll answer that question. But for me, it was keeping a balance. Like, I want to know more, I want to explore more, and I just can't sit idle. I see a story somewhere, I have to come back and file it or talk to people and just do it. So this is how it happened, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I keep seeing your, your Facebook post, the kind of traveling that you have been doing over the past so many years, and the stories that you have been telling alongside that. So it's like your travel, you always love traveling, I know. And from that, I mean, every time you travel, everywhere you go, you kind of, have a sense of getting a story. You kind of have a knack of getting a story out of there. So it's like traveling and journalism, you're mixing both, and you're going places. That's lovely to hear. So my next question is about, as you said, you went to Greece and you saw a story there and you pitched to Indian Express, and they approved that, and that story got published. So I mean, this is for everybody, I guess, that how do you really pitch a story to a media organization? I mean, I'm pretty sure that, there has to be, I mean, I don't know, in fact, is there an elaborate, format of how you pitch a story, or is it just a brief? Or, I mean, how do you pitch a story to a media organization?
Yes, Anjan, that's one of the most frequently asked questions. Like, how do you pitch a story? Now, I believe when you pitch a story, you have to be very sure about the story you want to do. As a journalist, we all have to be convinced about the work we want to do, about the story that we want to explore. So when you pitch, what I usually do is that I do at least 50% of the work on the story. Because when I have done 50% of the work, I know that this is a story to be told. I am convinced about it. Now, when I am convinced about it, I have to convince the editor sitting on the other side. So what used to happen in our newsrooms as well, like you have a story on Monday morning and there's a brainstorming that's happening in the editorial room. And then you convince your editor to know this is a story to be told. But your disadvantage as a freelancer is you do not get that opportunity to brainstorm with somebody. So you're sitting in your study, you have already worked on the story and you know this is a story to be told. So you write a pitch. Now, how to make a good pitch? Whatever story we do, data is something we all love and we all must have in our stories. Editors love data, percentages, study, quoting some government survey or study or something, reliable, authenticated data. So you must have those data whenever it's possible, whichever story has that room to give data. So must mention data. When you talk to people, do also mention in the pitch that XYZ had told me this, and this is what they have said. So if you make these 2-3 references in the pitch, not much, just 2 references will do, and give data and write a 250 to 300 watt pitch, because no editor has the time to read a 500 watt pitch because they are flooded with pitches. So you are just one of them, who is trying to crack. So write a very solid, strong worded pitch with say about 250 or 300 worded pitch, and then send it to the editor. Now, who do you send it? This is again one of the basic problems that we all face. Who is the editor? Who is the commissioning editor of XYZ news outlet? So for that, you really have to use your social media skills. Like I have honestly done a lot of these things on Twitter. Like I keep going to the right handles. I look for the editor of that particular newspaper or internet outlet, and then I approach them on Twitter. A lot of them have replied. And a lot of them have given me references to other, I work there, but I'm not the right person. So why don't you pitch to this? Or we have a form, or we have a generic email ID. So send the pitch there. And while you're pitching the story for the first time to a media outlet, you must write a few lines on who you are. What is your work like, a little profile, not much. Again, as I said, nobody has the time to read so much, but they should get an idea of what you have done in the past. Otherwise, it's very difficult for anybody to just approve the story, just based on the pitch. They also know what you deliver or what you have delivered in the past. So that's very important, I guess. So yeah, I mean, this is the way of pitching the story, and look for the right editors. And there are groups in Facebook. Like, I recently joined a group called Writing in India. It's a very helpful group, and you keep pitching your, you keep posting queries, and people who have written for different public newspapers and media outlets, they also give you the email ID of the right contact. So this is an ongoing process. There are many papers I haven't cracked as yet, so I'm still looking forward to write for them. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, this basically brings me to the next question. So as you said, I mean, not every story that you are pitching, or to every news outlet that you are pitching, may get approved. I mean, editors are, swamped with so many pitches happening from so many independent journalists. So the pitch has to be precise, to the point, and it should clearly tell why the story is needed to be told. And it should also have a profile of the journalist who is offering the pitch. Now, as you keep doing that, I'm pretty sure that not all story ideas and story pitches are approved. I mean, sometimes, they might say, no, we are not, I mean, we don't like this idea. We don't want to go with it. Or sometimes they might say, okay, I like this idea, but I don't like the way you want to tell it. Can you do a little more research and do it like this? Or can you talk to, 3-4 more people and get another side or another aspect of the story? So it can also be, a lot of iterations can go on a story pitch, and final product can be, a bit different from what you originally had proposed in your pitch. So how do you tackle these? How do you tackle, a pitch that has been rejected? Or how do you tackle an original story pitch that gets transformed into maybe something very different? And I don't know, maybe you may not like the way it has been transformed by the editor, or the way an editor might want it to be transformed. How do you tackle those?
Well, I think that's the most important part, after knowing who to pitch, how to handle rejections. And it's very natural to, have rejections. Even when we used to pitch our stories to editors in our newsrooms, a lot of times those stories got rejected, right? So here also there are chances that your story will get rejected. My first advice to all journalists is that do not get disappointed by that. Okay, this is just a story. That doesn't define you as a journalist. Fair enough. If somebody has rejected it, somebody else might take it. First fundamental rule is, are you convinced about it? Do you see a story here? If yes, go ahead and pitch to other people. I'll just give you an example, or a reference to what I have faced. There was a story that I was doing on Pakistani Hindus here in Delhi, and what the pathetic living conditions they have, and all kinds of promises that they made of getting a citizenship, etc. But nothing has been done, and they have been living in North Delhi for over 7 years. So I pitched the story to 4 different outlets. 4 of them rejected. And I'll tell you, rejection doesn't always come in a mail and saying that we'll pass this. Rejections often come because there is no response from the other side. You keep waiting that will they take it. So give yourself some 2 to 3 days time and wait, and keep working on other stories simultaneously. Do not really chase one story and then feel disappointed and demotivated. Acha, ye to hua hi nahi, what do I do now? Don't do it. Work on different stories simultaneously. Keep pitching the same story. If you don't get to hear from one editor for 2 days or 3 days, pitch it to other editors. As long as you are convinced, this will happen. Coming back to the story that I was referring to, after getting rejected by 4 different outlets, one outlet really loved the story, and they wanted me to give a overall perspective of the existence of Pakistani Hindus in India. So I again spoke with people in Jodhpur, which is a place where a lot of Pakistani Hindus live, and I spoke with activists who work with them. I quoted some Pakistani Hindus there. So that's how the story was developed, and it was carried in one of the outlets. So now the point is, how does, if it happens more often, how do you feel demotivated? Do you want to just leave the profession and do something else? Well, this is something I would say is a very wrong way of looking at yourself or your professional ability. This might happen. You might, your stories might get rejected again and again, but keep improving your pitches. Every time your story gets rejected, work on that pitch, improvise that pitch, and do read the the news that this particular outlet you're pitching to has published on these issues. So you get an idea, how do they cover it? Or are they even interested? Because they've already done it a year ago on similar issues. So keep looking for these things. And then you know that someday this pitch will definitely find a home. And I would say, even if it doesn't find a home, okay, a home that you want, please publish it in your blog or your website. A journalist should never kill a story if he or she is convinced about it. This is a golden rule to exist as an independent journalist. Because if you kill your story, you're not just killing your story, you're killing the story of so many people you interviewed, who expected you to write, who spoke to you, gave their time to you, explained issues to you. So give, just for, to respect their time, their perspective, do the story for your website or blog, even if you get rejected.
That's lovely. I think that's an extremely motivating talk that we are having from you. And so most important from what I could learn is that I should be convinced first that this is a story that needs to be told. That's the most important aspect first. I need to be convinced that yes, this is a story. Second thing is to have patience once you have pitched to organizations. Third thing is, even if rejections happen, even if nobody is interested, eventually, you don't kill the story. You keep that aside, you work on other stories. Eventually, you might get a publisher, like the case happened with the Pakistani Hindu story that she was talking about. So that's kind of a sense that I can get from here is that most important is rejections for a story can happen even for a working journalist in a newsroom, and it can obviously happen for an independent journalist who is pitching. Most important thing, you need to be convinced first that yes, this is a story that needs to be told, and I know how to tell that story. That's the most important aspect of it. Now, coming to my next question. So we basically discussed all the challenges when it comes to pitching and convincing an editor sitting on the other side that you want to tell the story and they should carry the story. It's about all the challenges of pitching. Now, apart from that, when you say your story gets approved, somebody says, okay, we will take the story, can you work on it for us? There are other challenges. These are challenges on the ground that an independent journalist would face, is my guess. Because if you're working in a media organization as a full-time working journalist, you can go to the ground anywhere. You have your badge of honor, which is the press card with you, and you can show that around, get into offices, get into interviews with government officials or politicians or whoever you want to meet. So you can basically carry some weight, that press card. But as an independent journalist, while you're working on the ground and we are trying to meet your sources, trying to meet people for official confirmation, or government officials, politicians, or even trying to convince people on the ground that you are a journalist and you work for XYZ and you're doing a story for them. So there are challenges on the ground. How do you tackle those challenges as an independent journalist?
Yes, that's again a very good question, Anjan. A lot of journalists, could not cover the COVID, the migration problem, how the migrant workers were walking miles last year when the COVID happened, and after the lockdown rather. just because it was a lockdown and they don't have anything to show as as their identity as a journalist, and they just couldn't step out and do these stories. So there are two ways. A, if you see PIB, the Press Information Bureau here in Delhi, they issue ID cards to freelancers as well, but their condition is that the journalist must have 15 years of full-time experience. So that's something which is there. Now, the second thing is there are, I'm not part of any press club, but I'm told a lot of these press clubs also have these iCards or something. FCC, Foreign Correspondents Club, also, if you take the membership, I think they give a card, but I'm not really sure. One must find out. And there is a Frontline Club in London. They issue cards to freelancers, ID cards to freelancers against a certain sum of fee that they take. And you can take it for a year or a lifetime card or something. But again, you have to check their website, their fee, etc. So this is how you can have an identity card. Of course, I know that identity card is very important. Now, how did I actually handle these challenges when I did not have a freelancer's card from PIB? I'd say, I'll just give you an example. I went to interview one of the politicians in 2019, and that was during election, and she was campaigning, and I wanted to interview her, and I was working as a freelancer. Now I went there in Uttar Pradesh, and I in every point, at every point where she was speaking. But initially I was stopped by the SPG. They were saying that, what is the proof that you're a journalist? She has a lot of, security cover. But when she came, like everybody else, I also kind of went there and asked her questions. And then after following her for almost 4 hours, she suddenly realized that, no, this journalist is really wanting a proper interview. So she called me in a car. I sat with her, and we had that interview, and that was published in the Telegraph. I'm talking about an interview with Priyanka Gandhi. So during the 2019 elections. But of course, this is something which we all face. And then I got my, all the application, etc. I filled in PIB, and my card came last year. But yes, I do believe that there is a major challenge here to prove that you're a journalist. But I would say, if there is any journalist wanting to do a story, and just check with one of your regular editors you work with. Check with them. I'm going there. You want a story? So in that case, can you just write? Send me a letter on your letterhead that I freelance for you, I work for you, and I'm there for you. So if this kind of arrangement happens before you are there on the ground, and these problems happen only when you are in a difficult situation. So I'll tell you another example. When I went to Kashmir in 2019, after the abolition of Article 370, so I did not have a PIB card. My application was still pending. But what I did is that I took the PIB application with me and got it signed by the person concerned in PIB, and then I took it as my identity card. Like, I have all the details that I have worked for so many years, and I've been holding the card for X number of years, and I'm in the transition of getting a freelance card, but this application is there with the MHA. So that helped when I was stopped by security forces at several points. Like, why am I here? Because there's a curfew, and I was not moving in vehicle. I was just moving in an auto rickshaw, and CRPF had given me a very hard time whenever I went to take pictures, speak to locals. So, but I had that as a defense. So just think about some way or the other, if you can get some sort of accreditation from your editor or from any agency, of course, government agency, so that people know that you are a journalist. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that insight, Sonia. I mean, next question, and the most obvious question, and I think I can ask this question on behalf of all the participants here, or all those who are interested to go into independent journalism. It's about how much money does an independent journalist make? Is it enough from a regular working journalist salary that we get, and we jump into independent journalism. We are doing freelancing for maybe host of news outlets, but that can happen only when I have made probably a mark as an independent journalist. I have done lots of stories, or I have a lot of experience behind me before I jump into independent journalism. Like I have 15, 18 years of experience in journalism, and after that I start independent. But there can be people who have maybe, 1 year or 2 year into journalism and they want to begin independent journalism. Or can somebody just begin, somebody can even begin say, okay, I am a journalism student, I get out from a J school, or maybe I'm not even a journalism student. I love writing, I love reporting, I love to tell stories of people, but I don't have a journalism background and I want to get into independent journalism. The question is, do independent journalists make enough money? Do they survive with enough assignments that can help them, sustain themselves? I mean, I'm just asking this as your opinion. I don't want to know how much money you make, Sonia. I'm just asking, is it possible to sustain? I mean, even for somebody who is experienced as against somebody who may be a complete novice just starting out. I mean, can we sustain?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And a lot of people, even if they're dissatisfied with their work environment in offices and, the opportunities that are getting, that are shrinking, over a period of time, they are not able to take this plunge because they don't know if they will earn enough. Now, what is enough? It is a very subjective term. What is enough for me may not be enough for XYZ. But I'll tell you how I manage my finances. Like I see this whole job of freelancing as a business, from a perspective of a business person. Now I see that there is an opportunity. Okay, I want to do the story. I'm convinced about it, so I see it as an opportunity to invest. Now I invest, say, I'll give you another example for what I had done. Now, I went somewhere for an interview, and it was just one person's interview, and I invested 14,000 for that 1 day trip. My airfare, my, car, the taxi fare, everything, and then staying there for a night. And I come back and do a story, and I get only 7,000 for that interview. Now, I have a deficit for 7,000 more. Now I again go for another story because again I'm convinced about it and I feel that this is a story to be told. I go there and spend about 8 to 9,000. It was not a very expensive trip. I come back and file 3 different stories for 3 different outlets, and then I earn about, say, 45-50,000. Now the deficit that I had from my earlier trip, 7,000, is already met now. And here again, I'm also having some profit from this trip. So you have to see it this way. Not every story will give you the same amount of money you are investing in a story, but that doesn't mean that every story is a loss, economic, in your finance. It's could be seen as your financial loss. It's not a financial loss. At the end of the story, you're getting a byline, right? I mean, it cannot be a financial loss at all. So do manage your finances. See what are your priorities. Like, some people are not happy even by earning 2 lakh, and some people are very happy by earning 50,000. And they just see that, oh, this is, I'm convinced about, I'm passionate about this work, let me do it. Money will come. And actually money is something that whether we have enough or not is something also in our mind. If we keep comparing ourselves with others, we'll always see that, oh, we don't have enough. That person is earning more than me with such less experience. But yes, he or she is doing so amazingly well financially. But what are you doing? How satisfied you are at your work is something that you have to assess. But yes, coming back to the practical terms of it, we have life insurance premium to pay, we have health insurance premium to pay, we have our car and home loans to pay. So you have to be disciplined. Be disciplined about your expenses. if there is a month where you're not earning enough, and so you can cut off your luxury expenses that month, or make a chart like, okay, in 1 month I will file 3 stories or 4 stories. So the money for these 4 stories will come, say, within 45 days or 60 days. So plan your expenses like that, cut off those expenses which you can, in a way. We all have such expenses, right? We have our luxury expenses, etc., which we can always manage if we want. The other advice I would really give to people is that sometimes what happens is that the payment comes very less, very slowly, like, it is delayed. Some people have made me wait for 5 months, and that then it becomes very frustrating, that, oh my God, I filed a story 5 months back, and when you wanted the story, you wanted me to meet the deadline. Is there no deadline for getting my payment? So you ask the editors directly, when? Give me a specific date. And please don't delay beyond that date, because then I will plan my expenses accordingly. But to keep a balance of your income and your expenses, apart from, say, filing stories for news outlets, you can also take up some contractual jobs, say a translations, like a translator's job. There are a lot of media outlets who are now looking for translators, and they would pay you a fixed amount. Or you write press releases, or say newsletters for some corporates. And I know I don't do newsletters or anything, but I've seen people have done it, and it just, you have to spend some 3 to 4 hours of your day. You manage, you do it from your own, you don't have to go to an office to do it. You do it from home, and this is how you earn and keep your like cash inflow coming. So yeah.
Okay, thanks for that insight, Sonia. So basically, 2 things. Okay, from what I can learn is you will get paid for the stories. Sometimes they can be delayed payments, but you will get paid. But the idea is to be very disciplined about your expenses and planning out your stories. And also maybe diversify. Don't just hold on to the fact that you will only do news stories for media organizations. Maybe you can also diversify to have a backup or a second stream of revenue while writing for corporate houses or newsletters and all that kind of stuff. But so basically it's a question of how you see yourself. As you said rightly, I mean, you basically see this as a business where the news organization is like your client, or a corporate house is like your client. I mean, that's the kind of mentality that you have to bring in, and if you want to be into this independent journalism career. So thank you, Sonia, for that talk. And now I'll start taking questions that I have got. So the first question comes from Pratibha Raman. Her question is, when you took the plunge, how did you approach organizations for stories, especially when you want to travel abroad and report? When you say you increased your base in reporting, did you travel on your own and then pitched the story?
Yes. First, when I referred to that increasing my base for the stories, of course, that whole perspective of doing stories from different parts of the world came when I was reporting for Telegraph. I was working with the feature section. They had sent me to different countries to report. That was like Bangladesh, Nepal, and while I got an opportunity to travel to Iraq with a couple of other journalists. So these opportunities came when I was working there. But when I left, I started taking these opportunities myself. Like, in the sense, yes, I planned my travel to Vietnam. I realized that these are the stories to be told. I filed about 3 stories from Vietnam. But all that pitching happened after I came back with the stories. Because, I was very new. I didn't know how to go about it. But I was convinced that these are stories to be told. Now, after I came back, I started approaching people. I pitched my stories, and then they accepted the pitch. And then, it started that, in fact, my freelancing, my career as an independent journalist started with a story on Vietnam. It was the cybersecurity law. So this is how I plan. Like, I even for, when I went to Singapore or Indonesia, all these travels happened because I took these opportunities because I thought there are stories to be told. I went to Indonesia during the elections, and then I did a story for Religion Unplugged on the Indonesian elections. So yes, a lot of times I actually take the plunge first because I really don't know what I'm going to get there. The more you speak to people, the more you're on the ground, you know that there's a story. So when you are done with your work, in fact, on all these stories, I've done 100% of my work. It's not even 50%. So when I came back, I pitched and then they got approved. I hope I have answered her question.
Yeah, I think so. She has a supplementary to that. Her next question is, how has COVID changed your reporting style since travel restrictions could play a dampener in reporting?
Yes, of course. I haven't traveled ever since COVID started. I only from Delhi, I went to Calcutta. That was the thing. And during the COVID, and I did not have a press card then, a PIB card then. So I, of course, had to do stories which could be done through telephonic interviews. I did travel in and around, travel in the sense you go out, in Delhi NCR and see what stories are there. You meet specific people. But of course, my traveling to other countries or even other states for that matter had cutled down drastically. And that's the reason why I'm just waiting for my second dose and just want to start traveling next month onwards, honestly. And of course, as a reporter, I'm sure a lot of us will agree that COVID has restricted our traveling plans. But then but there are other ways of reporting, right? There are plenty of stories that I've done on COVID, but when I've approached people who are in and around where I live and like in Delhi NCR, and I've met them with proper, taking all the precautions. And then there are interviews that I've done or like this on Zoom or on phone. Yes, if you see, the point is, even the editors you pitch, they also know that this is COVID is happening and traveling is not possible. So again, is this a story? You ask yourself, is this to be done? Find out ways to do it. Okay. And make it very clear to the editor that, listen, I did not travel there. My interview was done XYZ method. Be very clear about it. This is very important. Clarity is very important because they might assume that you are in a place where this is happening. So write that in that pitch.
Correct. Okay, thanks. I think that answers Pratibha's question. Next question comes from Shayantani. Her question is, how different or difficult is it for a woman independent journalist to walk in the ground?
Well, this is something which a lot of people ask me. Trust me. I mean, this is like, oh, you are a journalist. You're traveling alone. I remember when I went to Manipur for the first time, I just finished my breakfast and I am about to start my reporting, my first day in Manipur. And I finished my breakfast and I was just taking the stairs down to my room, and somebody said in Bengali, a guy who must have come for some contract, and a lot of these construction work happen, and they must be an engineer or somebody. So he said, oh, are you, I see you are eating alone. So are you here for some work? I said, yeah, I'm a journalist. I'm here for reporting. This place is famous for kidnapping. I said, okay. And I was like, why did he need to tell me this? But then I processed the information. I said, fair enough. Let him say whatever. I know how to pursue my work, right? So I have actually never, ever played my woman card in my profession. And I'm not saying all women play this card or anything. I'm not saying this. But I have never seen myself as a woman journalist. Yes, of course, safety is a big concern. When I traveled to Bastar twice, for 7 days in each of my trip, and I went to the jungles, I met all kinds of people. Of course, you're always concerned about your safety. But what works for me is my sixth sense. I am always alert. I take calculated risks. Of course, I want a story. I want to interview somebody who is very important. He is the newsmaker. But I take all the precautions. My antenna is always up, and I keep the phone numbers handy. I know where I'm going, who am I trusting, who is going to take me to that place. All that happens because my sixth sense is very strong, I think. And trust me, as a reporter, I've always worked on the sixth sense, especially when I'm reporting from a different terrain and a difficult terrain. And there's another thing which is an advice that I've got from my father, who never worked as a journalist. He was not a journalist, but he always told me that you should never embed yourself in a difficult zone, in a conflict zone. Because then there are probabilities that you will become a collateral damage. So this is one advice I always harp on. Like, I always believe that yes, I cannot embed myself with any force, because I could be a target. So yeah, I mean, precautions, my sixth sense, and I have to be alert. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that answers Shantani's question. Okay, the next question comes from Priyasmita Datta. Her question is, when a freelance journalist is doing some sort of investigative journalism, what is the protection? When it comes to investigative journalism of big houses, there's a security system as backup, someone is covering up as a freelancer. How does one balance safety? I think it kind of comes from the other question about women independent journalists. So she's talking about investigative journalism, the precautions, and how an independent journalist can pursue it.
Well, I would say whether you do investigative stuff or you just report a certain event, the ground rule is the same. Stick to your ethics, maintain your professional integrity, and go for the story you're convinced about. Who are these sources you're talking to? Be very convinced about your sources. Who are you meeting? What is the security that you see you could get from the editors you are reporting to? If you are very clear about the fact that this is one story that you're doing for your editor, as I said, that ask the editor to write, say, give you some sort of accreditation that you are doing the story for this particular news outlet. So carry that letter with you. Speak to all sides. Do not let people know what your story is all about. Keep digging out information, and you can keep saying that I'm just trying to figure out what is happening. Is there something more that you have? Can you connect me to some more people? And while in the process, you keep processing your story. And another advice is that if you're reporting on an investigative story, do not talk about it on social media. Don't even give any hint. We tend to do that. Like, I personally, whenever I've traveled to Kashmir or to Chhattisgarh or Manipur, any places where I know there are people who will be watching me, who just get an idea of the location, etc. I have always been very silent on social media. I only post my stories from there, and whatever photos I take or experiences I wanted to share, I do it only after the stories are published. Now I'm back. Now you do whatever you want to. So this happens over a period of time with experience. So yeah, I'm not very sure if it was a satisfactory answer for her. But
that answers. I think the most important part that you answered was, if you're into investigative journalism, the most important thing is, while you're going out and collecting the pieces of information, you never ever let your source, whoever that person may be, know exactly what your story is going to be about. They should never get even a sense. It's just a specific piece of information that you're looking from him or her. Your job is to get that information. You should never ever let anybody get a sense of what your eventual story is going to be. That's very important when you're talking to people on the ground. And as Sonia rightly pointed out, you never tell or boast on social media platforms about what interesting story that you're working on, or there can be something big happening. I mean, you should never ever, spill the beans, as I can say. I mean, if you are doing investigative journalism. Okay, the next questions come from Nandini Chakraborty. Her question is, do you think it is easy or better to start with a media house, even if you don't align to their policies, rather than start independent journalism immediately after you are out of university?
Well, let me tell you, Anjan, when we were studying in Calcutta University, and I got an internship with the with Hindustan Times Kolkata, and Anjan already got a job there. Remember?
We were working together for
yeah.
at Hindustan Times. Yeah.
Yeah, you were already an employee then.
Yeah.
You're the first one to get a job from our batch, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was an intern because I was sent as an intern to HT, and I started freelancing for HT then. Before that, and they liked my work, so they just said that you keep coming to the newsroom. And even though my formal internship ended in the very first, like for 1 month it existed, I guess, and then I was allowed to come to the newsroom, and I was filing 2-3 stories. I remember in 1 year I got some 90 bylines. So I started as a freelancer, by the way, but then I realized that there are not enough jobs in Calcutta, so I shifted. So then I started as a working journalist, as a salaried employee. I started, of course, in Delhi with Pioneer in March 2004. So this is a very interesting question. And I would say somebody who has worked as a freelancer and also then joined different organizations, worked with different editors in different newsrooms as full-timers, and then coming back to freelancing, is I've realized that when you are with the newsroom, even if you are not really, you're not very, I would say you're not very convinced about their editorial terms and conditions, but if you're getting a good editor to work with, if somebody who is making you learn, who is somebody who is telling you this is how you approach a story, if you get that opportunity, I don't know how rare these opportunities are these days, because we all know how Indian journalism is going on. So we just don't know what the scenario, but if you get an opportunity to work with a good editor, please take that opportunity, because when you're working in a newsroom, you'd learn a few things. You'd learn how to brainstorm. You'd learn from your co-workers, because journalism as a freelancer is a very lonely job. It's sitting in your study and you're constantly ideating. You have to be a self-starter. You don't know who can you brainstorm with, which journalist you can ask for a suggestion. So these things are there as disadvantages. But if you work in a newsroom, you get a certain idea about how news outlets function. So that will help you develop some skills. But if you are not getting that opportunity, please don't kill stories. Don't kill your instinct to do stories just waiting for a salaried job. Just file and keep reading stuff, good journalistic work. See how a good journalist in some other news outlets has approached the same story or similar story. Learn from them.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
I think she has a supplementary question to that. The second supplementary is, do you think writing a blog is a good step towards venturing into freelance journalism? I mean, first you start writing your blog as a student, maybe in your college or university, and so you get a sense of how you write. And if you think starting up on a blog is a good step towards a journey into freelance journalism, what would be your recommendations?
See, writing any day is going to help you. So reading and writing. If you have a blog, keep writing and see it as, and do edit your own blog, by the way. Just don't write anything you want. You have to just look at it as a piece of journalism which could be published in a news outlet. Look at it like that. And if you have a trustworthy person with you who is also into journalism and who can help you with the, the editorial style or the grammatical error, the grammatical errors we make or anything, who can guide you in some way, run it through that person. But if you actually see it as something that you would want it to be published in another news outlet and not just your blog, take that approach and do it more in a more professional way than just writing anything you want. Because we might think, oh, blog is our own space, I can write anything I want. But if you want to be seen as a serious writer or a journalist in some months or years to come, do edit your own blog, make it more professional, and post it on social media. If you know a couple of editors, just send them to them, send them the link and let them have an independent view. So it is nothing wrong in having a blog. But if you see blog as the only base to reach out to editors who can give you work, then make it more professional, I would say.
Thank you, Sonia. The next question comes from Kirtan Lodaya. The question is, if you pitch the same story to multiple outlets, do they all need to know that you have pitched to others?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
What's the rule on publishing the same feature or the same news in two different outlets, although there can be different angles and treatment to the same story?
Okay. Now, honestly, I am somebody who doesn't do it. Like if I do one story for one news outlet, I'll never pitch it to another. Now, coming to his first question, when we pitch, you write that this is a very, sensitive story and I want to do it at the earliest. So please reply, say within a day or two, whatever you have set your deadline as. And if they don't, then please pitch it to somebody else, because you're already writing there that, listen, if you don't reply, I'll pitch it to someone else. There are editors who just say that, yes, I pass on, please go ahead and pitch it to somebody else. So there are editors who do it. And then there are editors who just don't reply at all. So you keep your deadline and then pitch it to somebody else. And by then, if you think that the other person also replies and you have already pitched and got it commissioned, then you can always say, you know what, it was, as I had mentioned, that I wanted to do the story at the earliest by this. Give a date, always give a date. As soon as possible is a very vague thing, or at the earliest is also a very vague thing, because what could be early for you could not be early for them, right? So give a specific date and mention that you would love to hear by this date. And if they still get back to you after you have been commissioned by somebody else, just write to them politely, but I have more pitches for you in future. Do not disturb the working relationship with anybody, I would say. Do not. And also, coming back to the payment, I'll answer his second question as well. But just one thing, if your payment is delayed, please don't go on social media tagging that editor and shaming him or naming him. Please don't do that. Please maintain a cordial professional relation. Keep writing if there's somebody else who is more senior to the person and you can sort this out with a senior person, do that. And I really feel that this is not a very professional way of going and chasing editors for payment on social media. Okay, his second question was, what was the second question, Anjan? Sorry,
just question is it's a supplementary. That was, what's the rule on publishing the same
material
feature news in two different outlets, maybe although in a different treatment, with a different treatment or a different angle? Can that be?
So I'll give you an example. During the 2019 elections, I went to Gurdaspur. Okay, and my first intention was to interview Sunny Deol, and a star who has worked in all these sensitive, army border stories and films, and he's also kind of contesting from a border constituency. So there was somebody who was very interested in just the Sunny Deol interview. So I pitched that Sunny Deol interview and I did that story for that one outlet. But when I went there in Gurdaspur, I realized there's a larger story to be told because it's a border constituency. There's There is so much that's happening in that border constituency. There was an attack on police station. There is a lot of intelligence work that happens in that place, and there's this Kartarpur corridor was happening. So
Yeah.
I realized that there's a story here. And of course, because Sunnydev was fighting from that constituency, I just used one of the quotes, which I did not use in his interview, by the way. And then I pitched a story from the constituency and used one of his quotes, but I never used that quote in other stories. So yeah, then if you see there are two stories coming out, then just do it. But I've never done two Sunny Deol interviews for two different outlets,
Yeah, I think that answers Kirtan's question. I mean, basically, journalistic ethics and integrity is very, very important, whether you are working as a journalist in a news organization or whether you're working independently. I mean, you should never, ever try to copy or, produce a different version of the same story for different media outlets and just trying to grab some eyeballs or grab some extra bit of income. That you should never do. Integrity is very, very important in the field of journalism, whether you're doing it independently or whether you are as a working journalist on any organization. Okay, the next question, it is basically Kirtan's second supplementary. You already mentioned about some amounts on payment, but can you give us a sense of the exact rates currently in terms of, per word or each article? What kind of rates do journalists usually get?
Is he asking for Indian newspapers or international ones?
I think Indian ones, yeah.
Oh, Indian ones, sadly, the rates are very low. And after COVID, things have become very bad. In fact, some outlet used to pay 15 rupees per word. Now I heard that it's 8 rupees per word. So, but there's always a room for negotiation. I think if you can, just speak to the editor personally and see if you can bargain, and do ask the rates when you pitch. When they say yes, do it for us, a lot of times I've seen Indian editors never mention the payment that they will offer. But with international outlets, it's just a format. The moment they say yes, please do it for us, they mention one line, we will pay you this, with photos or without photos or whatever, extra this for photos. So they're very clear about it. But with Indian news outlets, I really see that this is where we lack, I guess. And chasing for payment is a very very common problem, and people do want the stories within the deadline, but they do not keep a deadline for the payment they offer. So yes.
Yeah, that's really a very sad part of the job. This is I think almost every Indian media outlet can be blamed for that. I have never seen a single media outlet that has a very robust system or process of payments as far as freelance and independent journalists are concerned. There's always a lag. There's a chasing going on, but that happens. But eventually people get paid. Sometimes people, like yesterday, I think Divash was saying that in some cases he got paid in 3 to 4 days, and some cases he has to wait for months. So that can happen. So you have to be patient, but don't go to social media and start blaming the news outlet or start blaming the editor for not getting paid yet for your story. That you should never do. You maintain a cordial professional relationship with every news outlet and every editor you're working with. That is very important. Okay, the last question that I have is from Triranjana Das. She's writing, "Hi Sonia, I love the way you have been handling the questions and your choice of words. I am myself a CU alumni and currently employed as a journalism professor in a private university in Kolkata, and I'm also an RJ in All India Radio. My question is that if I wish to move into this zone as a freelancer, what suggestions would you give to somebody like me who is in her early 30s and wants to shift gear? Since most places relegate me stating I am an academician, for so many years. So how do I convince them that I am more interested in proper industry work and then move on as a freelancer? Would love to hear your inputs.
Well, Nanjana, right? What a
Yeah.
beautiful name. And I'm so glad to know that she works in that All India Radio Calcutta office. I remember, Anjan, I went there once and I did a story from there. And what a beautiful place that is. I hope she goes to the same office. I guess that's the only AIR Calcutta office we have. So, what you should do is that you pitch a story, like as all of us do. It is, since you're not looking for a full-time job in a news organization, as I understand by your question, so there's no editor will tell you, oh, you don't have any experience, how could I give you a job? You write, but just chase a story as any reporter would write, so just do that and pitch, as I had explained how to pitch and etc. I know you approach any news outlet and they don't really want to see sometimes if you have enough work experience. How are people with no work experience freelancing? They are absolutely relying on the stories that they are here to tell, right? So you can also do that. And okay, one advice for all freelancers, I think everybody, is that never get demotivated by what others are saying. Believe in your capacity to tell a story. Get convinced in the story that you're here to tell. It's not about who is judging you, whether this is a story or not, whether you're 30 or you're 40, or is it too early or too late to start. Please believe in the work that you do. And as a freelancer, just as we do, I mean, we also have to work on stories and we have to send our pitches. Just start doing that, and you'll see that the moment you get your first byline, and you'll see that there'll be others, and just do forward that stories to everybody so that they know that yes, no matter what you are doing as a as a professor in a journalism school, you are here to tell stories just as a reporter or any other journalist. So write on what you want to write, and you don't have to always go to a conflict zone to report, right? You can start with something very basic, and then if you have interest in conflict zones, why not travel, do report from there as well. Nobody should stop you. I think this is one profession where we feel that there's no stopping. If you believe in the story, if you're passionate about the work, just go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter what others say.
And that's great. I think that's what we live for, journalists, right? I mean, the passion to tell the stories that we believe in. I think that's the motivation. I think nobody can stop you. No person can stop you. No media outlet can stop you. I mean, if you believe that there's a story that needs to be told, believe me, you will get an outlet that gives you that voice to tell that story. I mean, you will eventually get it. It's the passion that's important. Never get demotivated. Thank you, Tina, for all the questions. I'm done with all the questions, and we are almost done on the session as well. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. It was wonderful interacting with you. It was such a lovely insight we got into the world of independent journalism, into the work that you have been doing, the kind of stories that you have done. And I think this has been very helpful for all the participants who were here, and they could really get a sense of the kind of work that independent journalists are putting in. I think the real stories in media are coming from independent journalists. So I think if any of you even got an iota of motivation from today's session, believe in yourself, believe in the passion for telling stories, convinced that you can tell that story, just go ahead, jump in. You will make a living out of it. Let me tell you that. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. It was a lovely session, and we are going to be back next week with more independent journalists telling their stories into the world of independent journalism. And I'm sure our run of motivation will continue. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Anjan. It was really lovely speaking with all these journalists, and I like the questions. I'm just so glad to have interacted with them, and I just hope they've got some information which would be helpful.
I'm sure. Niranjana just says, thank you, Sonia, for answering my query. And she goes to the Western music compare there in the AIR room. So that's the same place where you're talking to.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. We will be back next week. Bye-bye. Thank you, Sonia.
Bye.